All right. So it looks like we've got everybody here. So we're going to jump right in. Thank you for your time and attending today. So today we're talking about cyber insurance meets managed IT. And so this is an important topic for business owners and businesses to go through because when we think about cyber insurance, it's a lot different than other types of insurance, right? So we get car insurance, and if we get in an accident, we're typically covered. We don't have to worry about keeping up with any requirements or anything that may be imposed upon us. But cyber insurance is different. And so I'm excited for the opportunity to get to go through this with you guys today. So what we're going to go through is, just kind of what cyber insurance is, what the role of IT strategy is in cyber insurance. We're going to talk a little bit about cyber insurance requirements, and then common reasons that claims are denied. And then we'll finish up with talking about where do kind of IT service providers fit in. So, what is cyber insurance? It's a product that's designed to protect businesses from the financial consequences of cyber incidents, such as ransomware, data breaches, if you get phished in your email, things like that. This helps you recover from that incident without bearing the full brunt of the financial damages. And so, depending on your coverage, it can help you pay for a few different things. So, incident response and recovery. So, hiring IT experts to investigate and contain the breach. Sometimes it requires a third party, not just your MSP, to come out to get those systems back up and running. Sometimes things don't decrypt properly, if you have an encryption event. And so there are absolutely companies who, their entire job is to help people recover from incidents on the cybersecurity side. Restoring systems, data, and network, and then obviously removing the malware or ransomware, getting things back up and running. There are legal and regulatory costs. So lawyer fees if you end up getting sued by somebody or if you need legal advice. Cost to comply with any data protection laws that you may not be in adherence to. And then fines or penalties. And this one is something that, if you are under HIPAA, or if you are a DoD provider or somebody that has some sort of regulatory compliance framework, there may be something in there that your insurance policy will help you pay for. Notification and support is also a big one. So oftentimes you'll be required to notify affected customers after a data breach to let them know that their information, was stolen. And so a year or two ago, my family of 5, we each received an individual letter from a health insurance clearinghouse letting us know that all of our personal and health information data was a part of a really large breach they had that made national news. And so that ends up, being a part of this. They also were required to pay for credit monitoring and identity theft protection for us for a year. And so you don't want to pay for that out of pocket. That is something, that can be covered under a cyber insurance policy. Business interruption losses. So oftentimes policies will cover your lost income if your systems go down, or will cover extra expenses to keep operations running during downtime. This one is, some insurance policies have it, some don't. But sometimes they'll actually pay for the ransom payments. Sometimes they'll pay for a professional to negotiate that for you and to handle the incident response. So there's a lot of different things that this can cover. Lastly, would be reputation management. There are PR firms and crisis management firms that can be covered under policies to protect your brand during downtime or during a major cyber event, to make sure that once you fully recover from this, that you're still going to have a business to come back to. You're still going to have customers. So the PR firm, they'll help you manage all of that, from the perspective of what's the consumer see. So this kind of coverage is more than just a safety net. It can help your business survive and recover from a cyber event. But qualifying isn't automatic, and neither is getting paid by the insurance company. So your IT strategy plays a major role in getting coverage, but also staying covered so that if you need to use it, you'll be eligible to do so. So we'll look at how we do that here kind of in the next slide. But before we jump into this, we do, if you notice, if you've been on other webinars, it's usually Corey and I who are doing these. Corey's not here today. He has abandoned me for a cruise, which is way more fun than talking about cyber insurance, but not as important. So I hope Corey's having a good time. But today we have Michael from TechRug. Michael works in the cyber insurance business. And so he has been gracious enough to join us today to be able to answer some questions or just to hop in with things that he's seen or heard from his years of working in this business. So, Michael, welcome. And thank you very much for
Yes,
being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about
thank
TechRug?
you. Thank you. Apologies, I was a couple minutes late getting on here. That I recently tore my ACL trying to play soccer,
Mm,
and physical therapy started today. And you know how that first doctor's appointment goes after a major surgery. If anybody here's had one, that it takes a little bit longer than expected. I tried showing up early, and here we are. So, appreciate you having me here. TechRug, we are the technology risk underwriting group. So, cyber insurance, the technology space, working with people like Zach and working with the end clients is something that, we specialize in. A lot of the people I relate it to kind of like you have a heart problem, right? You're not going to go to your general practitioner. You're going to a cardiologist. So that's what we see ourselves as in this space, and with the uncertainty that is around cyber, it's something that every single person that if you're connected to the internet, you should be working with. So being able to come on here and educate a little bit with Zach and with the team are monumental, I think, just in kind of opening people's eyes to an insurance that, hey, what is cyber? Like you had hit the nail on the head with your explanation of different things and different coverages to kind of look out for. All the policies are unregulated when it comes to what's included in them. So using your IT provider and having the right securities and controls is number one. But two, you want to make sure that your policy covers basic things like ransomware and cyber extortion or business interruption. If you're shut down, how are you going to work? Coming from the doctor's office now, if Ohio State and the Ohio Exeter Medical Center got shut down and they can't access patient records, what do they do? What do you do? If you're an accountant and you can't access tax returns, what do you do? You're going to have tons of clients and really upset individuals that it's not something that you want to deal with, one, at all, but two, financially, the financial cost to it. That's why you carry cyber. So definitely a ton going on, a lot of simple things I think that you're about to get into on the IT strategy and cyber, and why the two worlds, bringing them really together, Zach, is key for people's success, I think, in not only 2025 and 2026 and 2027 and beyond, but really key to doing business. I think it's the cost of doing business anymore is having the right cyber policy in place and cyber E&O policy in place, for our managed service providers. So happy
yeah.
to assist with any other questions that people might have, but I'll kind of let you take over.
All right. So, when we look at the role of IT strategy in cyber insurance, it really is more of a partnership than other insurance products that you purchase for your business or that you purchase personally, because there are so many requirements that we have to meet. And it's not just that we have to set it up right to start, but we have to maintain those provisions in the policies throughout the life of the term. Leading, if we don't keep up on that, then that can lead to a denial of a claim, which is absolutely the last thing we want. So With cyber attacks increasing in frequency and complexity, insurers are tightening requirements. We deal with a lot of the questionnaires that come through for many, many clients. And the questions now are actually really well written by somebody who understands the consequences of not having these things in place. If you were to get cyber insurance 7 years ago, it was a much easier proposition. The paperwork was less. They didn't ask you nearly as many questions. They basically wanted to know, hey, do you have a firewall and do you have antivirus? And it was pretty basic. But the insurance business, they are a for-profit business. The cyber piece of it has not been lucrative for them in a lot of years. And many companies have actually pulled out of that space because they had substantial losses. And so the ones who remain in that space, they want to know that you're doing everything that you can to protect yourself from one of these large events because they don't want to have to pay out, which makes sense. And so, we want to make sure that we're doing things that are forward thinking, that demonstrate that we're not only aware of the cyber attacks that are out there, but we're actively defending against them. And so this helps you qualify for the coverage, but most importantly, avoid the denial. So let's look at kind of what you can expect, as far as insurance requirements go now. So to get covered, you need to meet some specific standards that they'll outline for you. Some of the basic ones that everybody asks for is MFA, or multi-factor authentication. So for Colorado high-tech clients, this is something that we mandate across a lot of different systems. You don't have the option to work with us and not use this. So if you're on this call today and you're a Colorado high-tech customer now, you have MFA of some sort covering your systems. This adds that extra layer of protection. So even if we do get credentials that are breached or exposed, unauthorized access can't occur. Data backups. They're going to ask us questions about data backups. How regularly do we back up the data? Where is it stored? If somebody were to breach the network, can they also access the backups, or are those in an environment where they won't be able to get to those? Endpoint protection and antivirus. So this is one where antivirus has always been required, but now we're starting to see different products like endpoint detection and response, or it's kind of big brother managed detection and response, which give us more insights into who's accessing what systems. Does this access look legitimate? And is there an ability, to shut that access down if we see something that looks fraudulent? Employee cybersecurity training. So this is something that, we've got a product as well, where we have, monthly emails that come out and it says, hey, watch this video, and take this test at the end. Some cyber insurance policies I've seen are requiring that now because they want to know that the people in your business are keeping cyber top of mind. And so by taking part in a monthly cybersecurity training, that helps us show the insurance company, hey, we take this seriously. We're always telling employees, if you click on something, that you shouldn't have, let us know right away. Or if you have a question, it's a lot better to ask us before you click than to report that, hey, maybe I just got phished. So incident response plan. This is something that is newer to some cyber insurance policies. So they're asking for a documented plan of how your team would respond in a cyber event. And oftentimes it's not just, technical in nature. They may ask questions about, what workspace will you use if everything in the office is shut down? What communication platforms will you use to notify people who are affected? So an incident response plan is a really in-depth, time-consuming plan to create, but it's a beautiful thing to have if you ever need it. And it's also something that, and it seems like this would be commonplace, but not everybody prints them out. And so, if you get ransomware on all your systems, you can't print. So we have to create this policy. We have to print it out. We've got to keep it somewhere with a lot of different people's contact names and numbers, insurance plan numbers, things of that nature. So that way we can notify all the correct parties if something does occur. And then lastly, documentation and proof of controls. So we want to make sure that as we're doing proactive work, that we're documenting what we're doing so that if there is an event, and the insurance company asks us for information, we've got that information documented somewhere. So without proof that we're continuing to maintain compliance with the policy, there is a chance that that claim could be denied. And so these are business critical safeguards that we want to put in place. But even if these are in place, it's not a guarantee that your claim will be approved. So we can look at a little bit of that right now. So unfortunately, many businesses don't find out what's missing until it's too late. And so claims are denied more often than you think. And Michael, let me know if you guys use a different number, but in all of my research and prep for this
Yep.
webinar, I saw that about 40% of
Uh-huh.
cyber insurance claims were denied last year.
That is correct. You have got to be very careful when you're looking at securities and controls. A lot of people, what they'll do is they think that they have an understanding. They don't sit down with someone at, Colorado High Tech and go through their insurance application to make sure, hey, we have multi-factor, right? You just touched on it. We're doing security awareness training. We have regular backups. If you don't know the answer, don't complete the application. Otherwise you're 100% correct. It's 40% of the claims are being denied right now in cyber insurance, and premiums are doubling and tripling. So you're
Yeah.
paying right now, you might pay $10,000 a year. Your premium's going to jump to $20,000 or $30,000 a year, and it might only work 60% of the time. I wouldn't invest the money in it. That we've all been in school. We all went through school. If you got all D's, you got 60% in every single class, you wouldn't have graduated. So why is it acceptable now that insurance premiums are doubling and tripling and the claims are only paying out 60% of the time? It's not okay. So,
Yeah.
you've got to be very careful. These common reasons you see is you don't have the right securities and controls. That those insurance applications, a lot of them, are intentionally vague. How many times have you seen where somebody asks, "Do you have MFA?" Where? Where do you want to see MFA? Do you want it on email? Do you want it on remote access? Where do you want to see MFA? Get specific, ask questions if it's not clear enough. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to fall into that 40% claim denial. Incomplete or outdated documentation, same thing. You're not filling out the application correctly, or you thought it right, you thought it was to be true. Turns out it wasn't. Well, claim's going to get denied. You don't get the largest building in every major city by cutting checks to people. So you've got to
Yeah.
be very, very careful when you're completing your insurance applications. And then the other side of it is incident response. That I do see claims get denied because people are filling out the insurance application. They submit their incident response plans. Okay, we've got everything done. All our T's are crossed, all our I's are dotted. But then the incident response, when something happens, and your insurance policy, remember, is a contract. So it is between you and that insurance company. That Colorado High Tech is not privy to that contract, right? TechRug is not privy to that contract. So when your incident response plan and before a breach happens, go to your insurance company and say, hey, if there's an incident, I want Colorado High Tech involved. How can they be involved? What can they do? Now, I don't want to get into the sales side of what we do, but there's a very, and I'm happy to connect with anybody offline after this webinar, but there's been a very hard shift in what those insurance companies want Colorado High Tech to do and not to do, that TechRug has pivoted the opposite direction, and we're, more collaborative in our approach. I'll leave it at that without getting into too much of the sales side of my brain and where I want to go. But your incident response plan, verify before anything happens. Let's be proactive. Talk to your insurance company. If you don't have an insurance company, happy to connect again offline. Even if you do, no obligation review, happy to look. But we've got to address these problems before they come multi-million-dollar claims. And now all of a sudden, if you're a one or two person firm that, hey, we do about $1 million in revenue or less per year, $1 million claim that goes uncovered could seriously put you out of business. So you got to be very,
Yeah.
very careful.
Yeah, and I will say for us internally here, we do have a policy that for the vast majority of insurance carriers out there, we will not start any remediation and we won't touch anything until you as the client have touched base with the insurance company. because there are times that they may say, well, Colorado High Tech started before we got approval, or they did X, Y, and Z, and we actually feel like that negatively impacted the recovery process. And so we're going to take a large percentage off. And so we would make sure that, you would connect with the insurance company first before we get started. But that's not an instant call and okay, go ahead and do X, do Y, do Z. They may want to do some due diligence on their part to see exactly where it's at. And so, yeah, it's a slower step, but it's a necessary one to make sure that, we're going to get the most bang for our buck out of this policy.
Right.
Because as, Michael referenced earlier, if you're in school and you get a 60%, that's not a great grade. As someone who didn't care for school that much, I saw my fair share of 60 some percents 25 years ago when I was still in school. And it's not fun. So yeah, let's make sure, that we're turning this to where it's closer to 100% that we're going to get paid out.
That's right.
So lack of proper security control. So the things we went over in the last slide, as far as some of the high level stuff that the insurance companies are asking for, we want to make sure that we have got those in place. And so one tough story of this is City of Hamilton, which is in Ontario, Canada. They had a ransomware attack that was really bad. Disabled approximately 80% of the city's network. The attackers asked for $18.5 million in ransom. The city declined to pay. They said they would focus on remediation and restoration instead. And so the recovery costs reached 18.3 million. So pretty close there. But for them, they had to pay for covering emergency response, different system recoveries, third-party expertise, and infrastructure upgrades to get themselves back to where they needed to be. And so more than a year later, they learned that their $5 million claim was being denied by their insurance carrier because they didn't have MFA deployed on all their systems. That's a pretty easy piece to make sure that, as we're spinning up new devices and new users, everybody has access to MFA. But in this instance, that was a $5 million mistake. And so making sure that these security controls are in place is huge. Incomplete or outdated documentation. So making sure that, we get everything in place to start, but then we document how we're continuing to service the account and how we're continuing to double check on security measures and even trying to strengthen what it is that we're doing. So we want to show them that we're trying to have the best security posture that we can. Michael touched on the insufficient incident response. So sometimes when you contact the insurance company can play a big part in this. And if you're way down the road on already remediating things, you may not be covered. Or if you don't have a plan in place and things start to go haywire, they may say, hey, you guys, we view X, Y, and Z expenses that you've submitted as non-mission critical. And had you had your ducks in a row and had you spoken with us first, we could have helped you avoid these big costs. Therefore, we're not going to cover them. And then lastly, incidents outside the scope of the policy. So this is a big one to understand what's included and what's not, because policies, they specifically, outline what their inclusions and exclusions are. So most of them are going to say, hey, if there's an act of war, we don't cover it. Or, an attack from a foreign government, we don't cover it, things like that. But here's a story from a company whose business partner was breached and they were negatively affected. And so BitPay, which is a global currency payment service provider, they filed a $1.8 million insurance claim, but it was denied by insurance. And the loss was caused by a phishing scam in which a hacker broke into the network of one of BitPay's business partners, stole the credentials of the CFO of BitPay, pretended to be him, and asked for 5,000 Bitcoins to be transferred to a fake account. And so this is obviously a few years ago, because 5,000 Bitcoins today is a lot more than $1.8 million. The insurance provider stated that its denial was based around the fact that the loss was not directly associated to BitPay's security, and that third parties Any breaches that they may have were not covered by their policy. So understanding what is in or out of the scope of the policy really can help us make some critical decisions about, well, what do we need to make sure that we're covering ourselves? Where do we maybe need to enhance something in our security posture if that cyber insurance claim, won't cover an event? All right, so where do IT providers, what exactly do we do? So when it comes to cyber insurance, we're going to make sure that you qualify. Our job then is to maintain that qualification and maintain those things that the cyber insurance company has asked of us. We want to bridge that gap to make sure that you understand exactly what's being asked of you and make sure that you understand what we're doing to put the systems in place to get everything up to where it needs to be, but then also maintain it. So good IT should not be reactive. It should be proactive. And this is a place where we really shine as a proactive, based company. So we want to periodically check these settings and the things that we've agreed to make sure that we're staying in compliance. And then lastly, we've got recovery. So should the incident occur, we help minimize the damage as much as possible, provided that we can, get the go ahead from the insurance company to start work. So that's a big piece of the incident response and recovery plan there. The faster we can respond, the faster you can recover, the more likely it is that the claim is going to be accepted and we're not going to get any exclusions or anything else in there. So whether it's strengthening your posture, documenting proof that we're doing the work to keep, the settings and configurations where they need to be, the right partner helps you meet the insurer's demands without dealing and derailing daily operations. And so we're towards the end here of this. And so if you guys have any questions, go ahead and throw those in chat now, and I can answer them or Michael can answer them. But Michael, before we go to any potential, attendee questions, the one question I get for you, and it's the one that I get asked the most, and I don't have a great feel for what the answer is. But how much coverage does a business need to have?
That is a excellent question, and one that I also get a lot. And that if anybody tells you you have to have $1 million or have to have 2 million or 10 million or whatever the number might be, they're lying to you. Because at the end of the day, after you think about, hey, what vertical do we work in? Okay, what do we focus on? Okay, we're an accountant, right? Or we're a doctor, or we are an architect or an engineer. If we were to get breached, what is the worst case scenario? Okay, we're down for average downtime, due to a ransomware incident, about 21 days. Okay, if we were down for 21 days, and this would be the cost to the business, is that number, is it $1 million? Is it 2 million? Is it 5 million? Is it 10 million? At the end of the day, what are you as the business owner most comfortable with in terms of coverage? I've got clients that are, comfortable with 1 million. Some are 2, some are 5, some are 10, some are 100 million for larger companies. Now, I can advise on, hey, if you're a $50 million organization, I think $1 million in coverage is probably underinsured, but you have to put your head on your pillow at night. If you're comfortable with 1 million, I'm comfortable with 1 million. Let's go for it. Are there any contractual reasons, working with your end client, right? The end client, do they have a requirement that they want you to carry 2 million, 3 million, or 5 million is typically what I see. So a recommendation on what they should do, I can help, right? Anybody can go look at the, IC3 reports, the FBI crime statistics. ChatGPT spits back some pretty good, analysis on what it thinks an incident will cost, right? Factor all of that in when you're looking at a policy. I would say minimum, you start at 1 million and then you just go up from there based on what you're comfortable with. And, you can always break up payments, things like that, but most likely cash flow, things like that. But what are you comfortable with? God forbid you get hit 2 million, 3 million, 5 million. You're not going to, you're not going to regret taking out a $2 million policy over $1 million policy when the worst day of your professional career happens and someone's in your network. You want them out. They want 10 Bitcoin. You've been down for a week. You're losing clients. What do we do?
Yeah, No, that I think that's a great answer because, you know, all companies, depending on, where they're at, what vertical they're in, how reliant upon technology they are, they have a certain ability to kind of work through some of this at times. So if you're a landscaper, you can go out and still do your core business if your network gets hit, provided you know which clients you're supposed to go to that day. But if you're a medical office and you can't access your medical records, or if you're an accountant and you can't access your client records, then you're dead in the water. There's nothing that you can do. And so, yeah, it really, it's not a one size fits all. Oh, take, 2% of yearly revenue, and
Right.
then that's what you should be insured for, something like that. There is no formula for it. So it really is, in my experience as well, on a case by case basis. What do you do? How reliant on technology are you? And, how big of a pickle are you going to be in if everything gets shut down?
Right. Right. And the other thing that I hear too is, oh, we're too small. We're only one or two people. These bad actors, when they get in, we see them. We deal with ransomware events all the time here at TechRug. But these bad actors do not care the size of your organization. You could be a one person firm, 50, 100, 5,000, whatever it might be. If they can find a way into your system, they're gonna get in. And once they're in, and usually they sit dormant for a little bit, kind of see what, okay, if they're sending out invoices that are $10,000 on average, if they float one in that's, not obviously not legitimate, that you wouldn't think anything of it because you're used to seeing $10,000 invoices or whatever it might be. So you've just got to be very, very careful when there is something going on, there is an incident. What number, again, we're kind of back to, what number do we think is acceptable for the overall insurance amount, right? You just got to be extremely careful. It's all unregulated. I think that we're headed towards regulation. That's a different story. There's a lot of things that are going on, the insurance lobbyists and things like that, but it's just going to continue to get worse. Protect yourselves. For policies should be right around $2,000 a year, unless you've had a claim or larger. It's usually about $2,000, up to 3 or 4,000, just depending. But for that amount per year that you could protect yourself, but then the policy's going to pay out well over $1 million, I would consider it worth it. But at the end of
Yeah.
the day, you have to put your head on your pillow. If you feel the same, then let's talk. But it's definitely trying to be resourceful and use the right IT provider, use the right cyber insurance, make sure that you're crossing all those T's, dotting all those I's. So when something does happen, we're down for several minutes, if not hours, versus, several days or weeks or months at a time.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, I don't see any questions in the chat. So, Michael, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Yeah, if anybody is interested in talking to TechRug, where can they reach you at?
Yeah, so they can always go to our website, techrug.com, or, if you wanted to send me an email, it's just Michael, Michaels, at techrug.com. You send me an email, happy to connect. Again, no obligation. Just want, if I can educate around cyber and you learn something, then that's what I want to do. So, and hopefully write cyber policies. But appreciate you having me here. Always good talking to you, and the chance to educate some people around cyber. So I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, yeah, our pleasure. So, thanks again. All right. So, now that we have come to the end, I am going to do our drawing. So, click on this. And thanks again to everyone who attended. All right. The winner is Jonathan G. So Jonathan will reach out and get you your gift card. But thank you guys very much for attending. And we look forward to seeing you next quarter, mostly because Corey can do all the work to set this one up since I had to run this one by myself. So everybody have a great day. Thank you so much for attending. We really appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.